بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وبعد. جزاكم الله خير for joining in one of those conversations, and today's topic is an interesting topic that I was discussing with the Sheikh, and I think it's also one that I want your contribution in as well, right? And believe it or not, this topic is not my idea. It was actually the idea of some of the youth in Rahma Center who asked me, let's speak to us about this. And I found it really interesting. And the title they came up with was the following. And I'm going to ask you about when I say it, what does it invoke in you, right? The title was The Root Cause of Fitna. 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 And fitna needs translation, right? So I don't know how many people are familiar with the word fitna, right? Right. So notice this is not tell us about fitan, and you have books of hadith, Kitabul Fitan. You open Sahih Muslim and there is an entire chapter dedicated to that. Fitan is what? Calamities, affliction, trials, right? Difficult situations you're put in, right? Fitan. So then there is an entire book of that. But the topic was what? Is we can speak about, and people love that. And people will, of course, what comes, oh, fitnat al-Dajjal, the end of times, and the fitan that happens at the end of times, right? So when we say the word fitna, right, what does it mean? When I say it to you, what comes to your head? And I want you to notice what is the topic. It's not tell me what is the cause of this? What causes this? Is there something at the core of it? Something that maybe we need to do? Are all fitan the same? Or there's some fitan, tests or calamities or afflictions, as we're going to define it, that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're going to face them. But some are unnecessary that I cause. When I go to the school, they test me. Like if you go to any school and you want to get a degree, a part of going to school is what? Tests. Right? If you want to get a degree and you think you're not going to be tested, I'll tell you what, are you out of your mind? And that's what Allah, أَفَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Right? Do people think that they're going to say we believe and they're not going to be subjected to fitna, right? So here, who's the source of fitna? It's Allah. When the teacher in school subjects me to a test, is he pouring his wrath on me? Is he It's not. He's giving me questions carefully tailored to make sure that I understand there is a purpose, right? When Allah tests us, Allah's the most merciful. Allah's al-Latif, Allah's al-Qadir, Allah's al-Mu'een. So when Allah's testing us with something which it's for our own good, right? There will be fitan. And we can speak about that type. But is this what we mean by fitna, first of all? And I'll go to hadith and then I'll open it for you and we'll take it from here, inshallah, me and the Shaykh. Umar ibn Khattab asked once, and this is in the book of hadith, and did anybody hear the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam speak about fitan? Speak about this, the word fitna. And fitna at the core of it is what? Purification, right? But he used the word fitna here. And some companion said, yes, we heard it. And he said, no, perhaps you mean fitnat al-mar في ماله وفي أهله وفي ولده إنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة, right? No, this is not what I mean. Perhaps you mean the tests that we're subjected to in our wealth, in our children, in our spouses, right? So when we speak about fitna, and I'll be honest, some people say fitna, ya akhi, women are fitna. It's fitna, ya akhi, look how they're dressed, fitna, right? Astaghfirullah, like the woman is the source of fitna, right? And the Quran says, my children is fitna too. If you're going to take it like that, right? وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً. Even our relationship is a fitna, right? So that's one type. What other types? So Umar ibn Khattab said, this is not the one I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about the other types of fitna. What is he meaning? This is again something. The fitan that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. The fitan that sometimes people get so confused and people start even not knowing where the truth is. And good people start fighting, and there will be bloodshed between believers when I don't know what's the right and what's wrong. And when the test is so hard and I'm so confused. You see what we're speaking about here? So Umar was asking about that, and the hadith Again, Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman is the one that knows the fitan. And at the end, he says, no, no, no. Between you and those fitan is a door. Those fitan are not going to come as long as you're alive. And then he asked, will this door be broken or will we be opened? And Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman said it will be broken, meaning what? Omar will be killed. And once he's killed, fitan is going to start. We learn what? That sometimes there are people, because of the way they stand and the way they command, they protect from fitan. You guys see the idea here? There are some fitan that if good believers, good people do certain things, it's a door. It's it's a test that we can keep away. But if we're not doing certain things, we can be subjected to. So first, I'm going to, before leaving it to the Sheikh, I just want to, when I say the word fitna, what came to your head? Anybody wants to share? Envy and jealousy. What else? Anything that distracts you from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything else? Money, right? What else? Yeah, can I ask you something? And I'll say this and I'll leave it to the Sheikh because this is a part of the talk, right? Which is the question, how do we handle it? Cell phones, AI, fitna or no? Of course, right? Technology, smart home, the internet. Is it a fitna? Do I see it this way? Now, here is the question. So what do I do about it? Maybe if it's a fitna, I should do what? Run away. Is it better for me not to engage and hide because there is so much fitna out there? So don't talk to women at all. Just put a barrier and just as if they don't exist because they're a fitna, right? And the cell phone, leave the smartphone and use a phone like mine, right? خلاص, get away from it. AI, yeah, don't use it, يا أخي, it's a fitna. The internet, don't get a computer at home. Which path should we choose? Can we afford to الاعتزال like الدجال? Should we just disengage? Is this what we should do as Muslims? Or should we engage? But if we engage, my kids, if I give them cell phones, يا أخي, so I cannot give them a cell phone. I will never give them a cell. Is that the right way? They should not use AI. It's dangerous. What if they ask AI about Islam and it made them atheists? You can do that. It's too much, and I cannot fight the AI. I mean, man, it's going to use the resource. How should we engage? You get the idea? So those are two questions that I'm posing here. So I leave it to the Sheikh to take us with that, and inshallah we'll try to make it more coherent, inshallah.
So I'd like to begin at least, or continue this conversation by looking at the word itself. There's a surah in the Quran that has an alternative name. It's not what you find in the Quran, but it has another name that it's referred to as. It's called Surah Al-Fitna. Does anyone know what surah it is? No, not Munafiq. Not Hujurat, no. Not Tawbah. 20 something, 22, 21. Not Ahzab. Not Nur. Not Yusuf. How funny is the last one they guess is it? Surah Ankabut, 29th chapter. It starts by saying, Alif Lam Mim, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. The people think, the humanity think, that they can say, we believe, and that they will not be put through a fitna. Then it says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. We tested the people before you. And as you go on in these verses, it talks about Nuh alayhi salam, talks about Ibrahim alayhi salam, it talks about Lut alayhi salam, talks about the prophets. When Allah says, we tested the people before you, it takes you to the prophets and their people. So fitna isn't something that only happens to bad people. It happens to the prophets as well. And the Prophet ﷺ says the people who are tested most are who? The prophets. And then those who are closest to the prophets. Right? Now people can misunderstand this, and maybe as we go on we'll unpack that a little bit. But Fitna is a reality. It's a reality of life. And the Western world, the whole idea of the American dream is what? What is it? You have a house, you have your cars, everything's paid off, you own it, and you have a nice family, and everything is glorious. And so, as soon as something inconvenient happens, how does the Westerner react? How does the American react, whether Muslim or non? It's like it's the biggest deal ever. How can this happen? This is so inconvenient. Why am I living this life? Because we have this idea that we can create for ourselves a life that is free of inconvenience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this universe was created in a way where fitna is intertwined in it. There's no getting away from it. There's no getting away from it. Right? وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيا before that, so it's الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ. I mean, life and death was created for you to be tested, to go through fitna. Right? Okay, now this is really bleak. Well, hold on. Let's start to unpack the word itself. The word fitna means fire. Fatana means to burn something. Right? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَتَنُوا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَتُوبُوا in Surah Al-Buruj. The story of the king who built a trench and made a fire and started throwing people in it. Allah says, the one who did fitna to the believers, meaning the one who burned the believers. And so a blacksmith was called a fattan, or he would do fitna, a blacksmith. Why? Because a blacksmith, in order to mold shields and swords and tools and whatnot, he would take the metal or gold or silver or whatever and put it in fire under tremendous heat so that it melts, and then now as a liquid transfers that liquid into a mold and lets it cool off. This is called a fitna. So when you think now of the verse, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, the one who created life and death to test you, it sounds very bleak. But if you look at it from the origin of the word, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seems to be at least initially saying is that this universe is created, life and death is created in a way where you are shaped, you are formed into something. And yeah, sometimes it happens through hardship. That's a type of fitna. Sometimes it happens through ease. That's a type of fitna. But essentially, a fitna melts the human being, figuratively speaking, and then that process molds them into something else. So when you look at the companions, before or when the message first came, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha gives us a glimpse of the mentality of the believers. Not the mushrikeen, the believers. She says, radiallahu ta'ala anha, had the first verses of the Quran been, don't do this and don't do that, I command you to do this, I command you to do that, they would have said, no, we're going to do the opposite. But she said the Quran came bit by bit, captured their hearts, to where as soon as Rasulullah والسلام, or Allah commands something or prohibits something, all they say is sam'an wa ta'a. Immediate reaction. That didn't come out of nowhere. That didn't come because they convinced themselves this is the right thing to do. That came because Allah put them through a series of tests that molded them into the best of the best. When you think of them going through Badr and going through Uhud and the Ahzab and, you think they came out of that in the same shape as when they entered it? No. They came out better. Even Sulaiman alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا سُلَيْمَانَ. We put Sulaiman through a fitna. وَأَلْقَيْنَا عَلَى كُرْسِيهِ جَسَدًا ثُمَّ أَنَابَ. And not to go into the details of that, Allah tested him in a way. He put him through a fitna. And the result was Sulaiman realized something and he reacted to that thing by returning to Allah. And immediately after this, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Sulaiman asked for forgiveness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَسَخَّرْنَا لَهُ الرِّيحِ تَجْرِي بِأَمْرِهِ رُخَاءً حَيْثُ أَصَابَ وَالشَّيَاطِينَ كُلَّ بَنَّاءٍ وَغَوَّاصٍ. وآخرين مقرنين في الأصفاد هذا عطاؤنا فمن أو أمسك بغير حساب. As a result of that moment, what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him command of the wind, of the devils, of. Essentially, he left that fitna, he exited that fitna in a way where he was more prepared to take on the responsibility that he was already doing a fantastic job doing. This is the essence of fitna. Where the challenge lies now, I hope, is that once we understand the idea of a fitna, why Allah puts through a fitna, one, get this. In a hadith Qudsi, in a sacred hadith, Allah tells the Prophet والسلام, إِنَّمَا بَعَثْتُكَ لِأَبْتَلِيكَ وَأَبْتَلِي بِكَ. I sent you to test you and to test other people with you. Rasulullah والسلام, is a fitna for us. Will we obey or not? The good fitna, though, for some people, and this is the second point, once we understand the idea, the concept behind it, it's now in our hands to make the choice. Do we make the right decision or do we make the wrong decision? So Rasulullah والسلام, when you hear a hadith of the Prophet commanding you to do something, you are now in a state of fitna. Will you obey or will you disobey? I'll pass it over to Shaykh.
So, just a summary. So the first type of fitan, why do they exist? What's the root cause? Those are the fitna that Allah tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the simplest way to understand this, purification. Why does purification exist? Why? If I have impurities and Allah wants to purify me, if Allah wants me to make me pure gold, what does He have to do? Test me. This is not an evil wrath. It's no. It's for your own good. The reason they exist, as long as my heart has residuals of things that hasad and envy and things like that, fitan will happen so that I can see those and it's meant to purify me. The best way to remember it, there is this poem that I really like. I really like this one, and I've said it before, but it's because it makes sense. It says, I'm amazed at the seeker of purity. Do I want a pure heart? Do I want a heart full of tawheed? Do I want khushu' and salah? Do I want to understand Allah properly? Do I want that heart? Is that something? Yeah, Ya Rabb, I want that, right? I'm a seeker. I'm seeking Allah. And I'm seeking a heart by which I can really relate and understand who Allah is, right? Ya Rabbi, please give me that. Qalbun salim, right? I want that. So the poet said, I'm amazed at the seeker of purity. When the time of purification comes, he complains of harsh treatment. And then he says, son, when we beat the rug, what is he referring to? You know, when you have a rug back in the day and you want to clean it, what do? You give it a beat, right? I don't know if you saw it or not. You hang it and it's a good beating, right? Said when we beat the rug, the beating is not directed against the rug. The beating is directed against the dirt in the rug. Son, the harsh treatment, this fitan, is not directed against you. It's directed against the impurities inside of you. So the first type of fitan, those are fitan where Allah is the one that does this, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Hakim, Al-Alim, He will do it appropriately. You know, the smith that the Sheikh mentioned, when he's like purifying gold, he's not going to subject it to fire that destroys it. Just enough, just as needed, right? Allah does that. He knows who I am. So you need purification, but let me do it. Right? You see that? Now, what's the second type? Now, the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ warned of something else. Warned of what? The Quran, for example, says, فَلْيَحْذَرْ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَنْ تُصِيبُهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Let people be warned. Those who disobey the commands of Allah, let them be warned of what? Unnecessary tests. This is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are certain things that Allah knows that's too much for you. You're not ready yet. Don't go for that one. This is a difficult test. It's like a KG kid going and taking a high school exam. Yeah, I can do it. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that. Because you'll fail that test. Me, I can take a job of CEO in Google. You didn't. You don't do that. You'll fail it. It will be. Oh, you don't. You're not qualified. You're not ready yet. Don't take that test yet. You'll take an F. I'm telling you, right? Study first. So the Quran is telling us about something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows how to purify us. But He tells us there are certain things that Allah protects us from. If, for example, when Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells a person, do not be alone with a woman. It's a rule, Islamic rule. La, I think it's okay. I think I'll go visit her in her apartment and, we'll have some tea and, when we're alone. What do you think will happen now? That is an uncalled for, unnecessary test. You see what I'm saying? That is not Allah did this to me. No, wait a minute. Allah commanded you. Do not do that because that test is a difficult one. And Allah is saying, be warned. The moment you do not follow, the moment you transgress the bounds of Allah, unnecessary tests happen. The moment we don't implement Sharia in our lives, what happens? What Allah, be warned. More fitan is going, unnecessary fitan that it could have been avoided. It will become more difficult. The questions are harder. You see the idea? So therefore, the more in my own life, I conform to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more I'm shielded and protected from those. If I don't, I subject myself to those tests. And you find people in the hereafter asking, أَلَمْ نَكُنْ مَعَكُمْ? Surah in the hereafter, we were believers too. بَلَى وَلَكِنَّكُمْ فَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَتَرَبَّصْتُمْ. No, you were with us, but you subjected yourself to fitna. Who subject? It's not Allah. You subjected yourself to a fitna. فَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. You made choices against what Allah told you. Don't, because this will lead to a problem you will not be able to face. And you did. So some of the fitan are caused by what? My choices. And the Quran is telling us the more as a community, and this is again the individual and a community, when a community fails to follow Allah's commands, what happens? Fitan increase. Will not protect. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us also, and I leave it to the Shaykh to comment on that, which is very powerful. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to do something. And if you do not do this, it will. So the first one is what? Do not do this. If you break that, you asked for it. I told you don't take riba. Don't go into this credit card. It's a fitna. Don't. But you open the door and you subjected yourself to something big. What's the second one? You have to do this. And if you don't, warned. What is an example? وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ. قتال. قتال. It's not even jihad. And I'm saying it openly. There is no قتال النفس. Jihad النفس, yes. قتال النفس. قتال is fighting. Why does Allah prescribe fight? وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً. If you see oppression in this life, you see Hitlers of this life and the pharaohs in this life, and you have power, and you choose to sit back and do nothing. I'm not doing anything. I just sit back. I leave those people to oppress the other people. What will happen? It will be a fitna. A fitna for not only for those people. It's going to come and haunt them. What do you expect the children of those oppressed people that we've left for years, when they grow up, what do you expect they will do? It will affect all of us. And why? You did not respond to the call. And this is one. Another one, and I leave it to the Shaykh, and it's very, we like to quote that as a hadith. إذا جاءكم من ترضون دينه وخلقه فإلا تفعلوا. When a man comes to you with good deen and good khuluq, and he asks to be married, get him married. If you don't, what happens? Fitna. Unnecessary. When you make marriage very difficult, and then we leave other people and the haram is so spread, this is an unnecessary fitna. It's going to become very hard for that man. What does he do? Or that woman, what does she do? You see the idea? So are there tests that we, by our own doings, we subject not only ourselves, but even mankind as a collective community to unnecessary? That's the question.
I want to emphasize what Sheikh Hassan just said. when he was saying that when the kids of the oppressed are left, right, it's going to create a fitna. Now, what initially went to my mind, and I think may have gone to some of your minds, is that all these Muslim rulers are going to get it because they didn't stand up to the fitna, right? That's not what Sheikh Hassan is saying. He's saying the mess that we find ourselves in now today is because the Muslim community didn't take that issue seriously enough and it blew up. This is it.
Then why this
Mhm.
way? Why
Mhm. Right. And this is an incredible point because it takes me to the end of Surah Al-Anfal. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this is the first Madani surah. This is the first surah, not the first, second surah. So the Baqarah is the first. The second one, in light of the Battle of Badr. This is one of the surahs that establishes the foundation of the Medinan model, the Medina city. And this surah is heavily about al-wala, guardianship, and allegiance. Where does your allegiance lie? Are you playing the role of a guardian? And so the concluding verses of the surah says, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آوَوا وَنَصَرُوا أُولَٰئِكَ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. The believers who immigrated and they used their resources and their time, right, to promote the cause. These believers, they're awliya of each other. They're guardians of each other. Right? They're guardians of each other. They're there for each other. They're one hand with each other.
no?
It's not because of that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promoting this. And he then says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. The disbelievers are guardians of each other. Nothing strange there, right? Birds of a feather flock together. But what is the continuation of the verse? إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوهُ. If you don't do it, if you do not be awliya of each other, guardians of each other, تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. There will be massive fitna on this earth. In other words, let me reframe it for you. When we Muslims divide ourselves, that is the root cause of all the global problems. Right? How? That seems a little bit unfair for the Muslims because we are an ummah that is guided in its values. Our values are not human made, they're dictated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at everything spewing from the West, from feminism to atheism to transgenderism to LGBT to all of this stuff, it's an absence of guided values. It's not an absence of values, it's an absence of values that are divinely guided, that are correct. And then it seeps everywhere. Nationalism, where does that come from? The West, right? Because we failed in our job. I don't mean we, our great grandparents and the generations before that, because they failed at doing what they were supposed to do. We are now trying to pick up the pieces of the mess that was created. Right? And so if there is one root cause, if you're looking at the global level, I know there's an individual level, as we're discussing. If you look at the global level, the Muslims are in the mess that they are in, not because of a lack of resources, not because of a lack of numbers, not because of a lack of anything, except a lack of guardianship towards a fellow Muslim. This is what it is. And when you look at the political Zionists, you know, that ideology has been in America about 100 years. Muslims have been in America for 50, 60 years. So we're a younger community. But when it comes to when you compare what we have versus what the political Zionists have, we're 2 minutes behind. The big difference is they are extremely committed to this project. They're very committed. Aren't you fascinated at how committed they are to the project? What about us Muslims? How committed are we to Islam? I know I don't mean salah and. I mean actually committed to the institutions of Islam, to the well-being of Muslims. How committed are we? And so when you go back to the Surah Al-Fitna, Surah Ankabut, starts off by saying, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكَ. I mean, the fitna is intertwined here. What is the last verse of that surah? وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Oh, it's my favorite verse. My favorite verse in the entire Quran. Right? Those who strive in our cause, we will guide them, and Allah is with the people of Ihsan. Look at how beautiful this verse is. When you think of jihad, you think of aggression, and Allah says, you do it with ihsan. You do it with excellence. You do it in order to give, not to take. You do it in order to heal, not to wound. You do it in order to repair, not to break. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah is with the people of ihsan. In other words, you strive for the cause of Islam, you strive for truth, you apply ihsan, your reward is Allah. Not paradise. It's Allah. He's there with you. So when you look at fitna, we have a responsibility, we have a role to play. We have built the institutions, now we need to execute. And wallahi, I wish I could go into details just for the sake of time. Wallahi, I've heard stories of Muslims, small groups of Muslims, taking down multi-million-dollar enterprises and Islamophobia machines as a small group of people. That's what happens when Muslims actually dedicate themselves to something, and they do it for the right cause. We will guide them, as the verse says. You strive, Allah is going to guide you. He's going to help you be successful, and He will be there with you as you perform ihsan. Because what the Muslim does is gets rid of the problems, solves the problems, not creates it.
So, so what we're saying is that, so point number one was what? There is test and fitan and purification from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And they're intended to purify me. The reason is it's good. Because of impurities in me, Allah wants good for me. But we said that the second type is what the Sheikh is referring, when I fail to do things that Allah told me, please do this. Or I do things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me, do not do this. It opens a door of things that I might not be able to take unnecessary fitan. Right? And then I might not see it today. I might see it 20, 30 years ahead. And then when I ask, why is that mess happening? Sometimes it's what I disobeyed. The rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are meant to protect us from those unnecessary fitan. The Sheikh mentioned one powerful point that I would really want to stress. Being in a collective community. I put it, بعضهم أولياء بعض. What does that mean? I'm your caretaker. I'm your ally. We're together. Individualism. When Muslims choose this path, we fail. And the failure is not only on us, on everybody else. Look, the reason it's so difficult for me, look how we live. I live in the West. I speak about myself. So me and my kids, I'm the dad. They have a mom. I'm the dad. I'm responsible to do everything. Everything. It's on me. Back in Egypt, like the way I was raised, my grandfather, this wasn't the case. If I don't know how to teach my kids to fish, their uncle will. If I don't have time to spend with them, their grandfather will. If I'm lacking in one trait, my brother will. You see what I'm saying? If I don't know how to teach them math, their mother will, her sister will. The responsibility is distributed. But when we live individually, if I fail, they have nobody else. If you understand the amount of the difficulty of the test, I better be what? A super dad. Really? I have to do everything well. Everything. It's impossible, ya akhi. It's too hard. If we stick together, I need you and you need me. My kids are not going to make it alone. Without your kids, they're not making it. And your kids without my kids, they're not making it either. Institutions. When we choose not to do that and we choose to be by ourselves, and we fail to be, it will be an unnecessary test. I hope you understand that. Sticking together is a protection. When we don't, it's a route for so many unnecessary tests to happen to us. Right? So that's a second point that the Sheikh mentioned. Right, and I want to mention a story I think I mentioned here before, but I know it's embarrassing, but I'll embarrass myself. So what? Right? But it illustrates this point. Sometimes we say the life is so hard. Maybe I should take my family, go to Turkey or Egypt because the fitness is too hard. I want to save myself and I want to save my kids. It's a valid concern, right? I want to escape because the test is too big and I'll fail. Is that a correct attitude? And I'll give you a story about myself and my reflection on it. And I hope that makes sense. Long time ago, when I was in the university, long time ago, I had that stance. And I actually made it very legitimate. Listen, the life of this world is not worth it. It's all about the hereafter. Ya akhi, it's not, the risk is too high. It's too high. I just want to get by in the life of this world one way or the other with minimal possibility to do anything wrong because the hereafter is huge. So what I want minimum interaction, meaning that just I want to walk beside the wall as we say in Egypt, بيمشي جنب الحيط, right? Just like don't. And therefore, gender relations. I was debating with someone, one of my friends. I figured it out, and he said, "What gender? What?" I said, "خلاص يا أخي, it's very easy. I have a long beard. I have the Arab look, right? I don't talk to them. They don't talk to me. They sit here. I'll go sit over there. خلاص, done. It's too risky. Don't خلاص, don't what female and stuff just don't be in their presence. خلص نفسك. I don't have a mind for that. I'm done. I'm good. I don't need to learn anything about it or because I figured it out. Just don't interact with them at all. Don't tell them salam. Don't sit beside them. Don't smile at their face. Just look at. And I said, it's working. And he's like, yeah, you can. You can. And we're debating and we're walking and we're on the 16th floor back in the Ohio State University. And the elevator opens. And as I'm walking in, there was a young American girl just jumped out. And then we're walking and we're Egyptians. And then the girl looked back and jumped inside the elevator. The door closed. And the elevator started, And then she looked at me in the face and said, أنت بتحكي مصري؟ تكلم مصري. And she's an American girl. I said, I love the Egyptian dialect. And I spent 1 year in the AUC in Egypt to study. I really want to study that. And I would love to come and speak. What's your apartment number? What do you think happened? Of course, my face red, blue, like I was sweating. And it's the 16th floor, so it's going to take a long time, right? And I don't know what to do, right? Like, no, phone me before you come. And I gave her my phone number. I just gave her my phone number. That's actually worse right now. She knows my phone number. By the time the elevator went down, she had everything. My phone number, my apartment number, right? And I'm sweating, right? And my friend, who's now Imam Aziz in Sacramento, so who he is, right? We're roommates, looking at me and like, you know what he's saying? See, you cannot run away from the test. You cannot run away from the test. It will chase you. When we choose not to engage, when we choose to take a back seat, other people will sit in the front seat. And they will drive. And they will drive us south. And everybody in the bus will suffer. When Muslims choose to take a back seat, other people sit in the front seat. And they invent me. They invent AI. They invent the internet. They invent cell phones. Where are we? Because we chose to disengage life. Because we want to be safe. See, I was legitimate. What happens? You cannot run away from your test. You're here to be tested. You have to face it. And if you do not face it, if as a community we choose to take a back seat, everybody on earth is going to be tested. A lot of the tests of today is because Muslims have this attitude. I want to save myself, let me run away. When I went to Ohio, the first lesson I learned from a convert. We went and we had something called Ansar Relief to help converts, to help refugees, right? And our neighbor, rented an apartment, like the apartment beside us, and he was a drug dealer. And I was like, drug dealer, let's leave this place, let's rent another apartment. And that Muslim convert came to me and said, no, till when do you guys run? We will stay, he will leave. And he kept giving him da'wah, calling the police. The guy left. And he looked at me and said, that's your problem. You run away from your tests. Why are you in the United States? Because you couldn't handle it in Egypt. And if it becomes difficult in the United States, you go to Turkey. And if it becomes difficult in Turkey, you go. When do you stand? You can't run away from life. And when we choose to, everybody is tested. You get the idea? And you can't blame other people. They're doing their best. They don't know better. They don't know better. They develop those things without guidance because we are not there. And then everybody complains. Disengaging from the test is not a choice. The question becomes, but how can I engage? And I'll quote something and I'll leave it to the Sheikh to comment. Therefore, here is what's necessary. I must develop the muscles to deal with the test. So there is two ways. AI is too dangerous. Cell phone is too dangerous. My kids can't handle it, right? So one way is what? Don't give them a cell phone at all, which, by the way, don't give them a cell phone when they're 8 and 10, and of course. But no, don't give them a cell phone at all. What will happen at the end? Why am I doing this? I want to protect them from the test. The cell phone is what? A cell phone is not bad. It's bad when I don't have the discipline to deal with it. There is two ways to deal with a cell phone. One, don't have. The second, develop that muscle. Willpower, patience, so that you can have the cell phone and you can control it. But because that's a difficult path, I don't want that path. I want the easy path. وَتَوَدُّونَ أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَ تَكُونُ لَكُمْ سورة الأنفال. I want the easy path, which is run away. You can't run away from the battlefield. You can't. It's a battlefield. What Allah's doing is, the AI is there. What's the solution? It's not to run away. It will force me. I better have such a discipline, and I better raise my kids differently to handle that test. It's the only way. And Ibn al-Qayyim says the reason, or those fitan happens to the qulub. There are two types. Fitan of shubuhat and fitan of shahawat. The fitan are of two types. One, shubuhat. Shubuhat means what? Confusion. It's a fitna. You talk to an atheist and all of a sudden, oh my God, I don't know, he confuses me. What's the solution for that? Don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to atheists. Don't go to school. Stay at home. The internet comes and they will find the path to me. So what's the other solution? Learn your deen. Learn your deen. I cannot afford to live in the 21st century in the United States going to school with no ilm. A farmer in Egypt can. He's not subjected to anything. 5 prayers and zakah, good for. Here, I cannot run away. I have to learn. I have to have the ilm to encounter confusion. What about shahwa, desires? The muscles of patience and restraint. That I have to develop in my kids. That's what I need them to be so powerful. When they see a girl, nice and beautiful, and do you want to date me? No, I don't. It requires what? He has a shahwa. He's a young man. It takes a good discipline. Say, no, I'm not this haram. I'm not going to do it. Sabr. Sabr. Has a cell phone. There is a website. No, I'm not going to look. I'm not. That requires what? The muscles of patience we must develop. You get the idea? So there is two ways for fitna. Run away. It's sometimes necessary when I'm so weak and it's too dangerous and I want to save myself. But it's not a solution for a community. When the whole community runs away, the fitna will, like what happened to me, it will chase you and will hunt you down. So the other way is what? I have to take it on, which means I have to exert effort. I cannot afford to live like my family lived 60 and 50 years ago, learn minimal Quran, pray the 5 prayers, and that's good enough. It's not. And that's what led us to what we're in today. Because we were not in the forefront, we're paying the price. Now I can't be this way. I need to develop extra muscles from ilm. I better know well my deen. And I better know about Shia, and I better know because it's going to come to my kids and it's going to come to me. Now I have to. I have to learn. And I have to learn about Allah and make myself firm in ilm and yaqeen. And the other one is what? Patience and sabr. Right? To engage them when they come. Right? Wallahu ta'ala.
I'll wrap up with one comment, but before that, inshallah, our next session, so starting with daylight savings time, which is November 3rd, we'll have our session after Isha prayer. Isha will be at 7, and then afterwards we'll have our talk, inshallah. So once again, starting after daylight savings, which is November 3rd, so our next class, English one, will be after Isha prayer, inshallah. So I was with the youth of Omar Farooq, and they had this nice discussion forum. They invited me, and one of the questions that they had was, should hijabi women have social media channels to display fashion, right? To display fashion. And the youth they could agree or disagree. So there's a box where they would stand if they agree, and a box where they stand if they disagree. And so all of them disagreed, all of them, boys and girls. They all disagreed that it's not right for a hijabi woman to have a fashion channel on social media. And so they would give me time to comment, but the moderator is like, Shaykh, you even want to comment? I mean, it's pretty obvious. I said, give it to me. I do want to comment. And I said, I disagree with you all. They should have, of course, within the parameters of halal, right? We're not saying doing anything haram. And your fear of, men looking at her, if she's wearing her hijab, she's done her part. You men have a role to play in lowering your gaze. If you have no business looking at the channel, then don't look at the channel. Keep scrolling. But the ladies have business looking at the channel. But forget about Muslims. How about non-Muslims? Non-Muslims are going to come across that channel, and they're going to see something that looks nice, that represents our values. Values of modesty, values of whatever it is. So when Muslims do things, when they're in the driver's seat, why that's important is because Muslims will insert their values in the technology we make, in the ideologies that we produce, in the systems that we make, in the institutions that we produce, right? When you look at social media today, it's wreaking havoc in America, specifically America. It's causing a lot of trouble and a lot of damage. Why? Because it represents the values of America. Money. Make as much money as you can, no matter what, doesn't matter, right? Say whatever you want. Freedom of making fun of everyone and everything, right? So they use it based on their values. Had AI or social media been invented by Muslims who care about their values, you would find at least the problems are a lot less, right? So Muslims need to be out there in the driver's seat, in the front lines, because we have certain values that will reflect in what we do and what we produce. And we live in a time today where humanity's thirsting for it. They're thirsting for it. Look up postmodern art, the art that you see in these museums. Just Google postmodern art. And what you will find is images of melting human beings, distorted human beings. That's not random. That is articulating the sentiment of the society. It's like they see humans are just falling apart. They don't understand the human being, it's deformed. But when you Google Islamic art, see what comes up. Muslims rarely drew images of humans. Well, because we're not supposed to, right? But there's another reason, because that's not what we find, that's not where we find value. The human being in of him or herself is not valuable, it's how they behave, right? And so you find that in Islamic art, it reflects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, how he created the creation. So you find colors that are very calming to the eye. You find a lot of symmetry. I mean, look at the Islamic art, right? The calligraphy or whatever it is. There's beauty to it because Allah created the universe with beauty. A believer's mindset is optimistic. It finds beauty. It's attracted to beauty. It focuses on the beauty and it overlooks the imperfections. So this is what it means for Muslims to be in the driver's seat. And it's high time that we actually do that, right? So I'll go ahead and stop here. You have any last comments? Okay. Jazakumullah khair. Salah is in 20 minutes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. If there's any questions, please go ahead. Fitna here, the scholars said, like Ibn Abbas and others, fitna here means specifically shirk, kufr, disbelief. Yes. Any other question? If you haven't helped yourself to refreshments, please do so. That's all.